Hey everyone, it's Bethany with ABQ Creations here with another tutorial for you. Today I'm going to show you how to crochet the Smitten in the crocheted knit stitch. This is a great little stitch. It looks like knitting, but it's actually crochet. This can be a fun pattern for you and your significant other, as well as you and your child on a colder day when you're taking a walk. It allows you to still hold hands while keeping warm. So grab your supplies and let's get started on this wonderful Valentine's Day gift. For this tutorial you will need yarn. Today I'm using Caron 1 pound yarn in a light gray. As long as you use a weight 4 yarn, you should be fine. I wouldn't go down to a weight 3 for this. This will keep it nice and thick. Scissors, a size K or 6.5 millimeter hook, stitch markers, preferably one that is a different color from the other 3, a yarn needle for weaving in your ends. Let's get started. The first thing that you need to do for this project before you even start crocheting is to actually cut yourself a length of yarn, not too long, probably about this, and here's the reason why. When you join your two cuffs together, you're going to end up with one of two things. Well, you're going to end up with this. So you can see that these have joined, but even though I went directly into the stitches I needed to, it kind of stretches out into this hole. Now what I did to fix that over here is I went in and did a whip stitch while I was still working these rows. So I still had this on my hook, and I didn't want to have to stop my work to cut off a piece of yarn, because if I didn't pull from the middle of my yarn to work my project, then what you have to do is you have to either cut your yarn so that you can go back and cut the length of yarn you need, because otherwise what you're going to do is you're going to keep building up and closing it up, and then you're going to be tying it off at the end, and that would be too late. I wouldn't be able to go in now and stitch. I mean, you might be able to get in there with a needle and stitch if you're working like this, but I don't know about you, that would be pretty difficult. Then your only other option, if I want to close off this hole, would be to close it off from the outside and then weave in my ends that way, which is what I'll probably end up doing for this. But I just wanted to show that so that you know what's going to happen. So do yourself a favor, start off with a little bit of yarn at the beginning, cut off a little bit of length. You don't need much to seal up this hole, but that's what that's for. So go ahead and set that aside. Okay. Now we're going to start with our cuffs. So you're going to have to make 2 of these. The first one you're going to cut off once you're done, and then you'll just have to weave in that end later, and then you'll start your second cuff. But for now, we're going to start by chaining on 11. And then into the back loop, we're going to slip stitch all the way down from this starting in the second chain from the hook. So we're going to slip stitch, and I weave in that first end as I go. I know some people like to just save it for the end. I want to get that out of the way. The less amount of ends that I have to weave in, the better. And we're going to chain, I chained 1 at the end, and now we're going to slip stitch all the way back in the back loop only. So we're going to go into that back loop and start slip stitching all the way down. I'm going to chain 1, and we're going to do the exact same thing all the way across, and we're just going to keep going until we have about 30 rows total, because we want to have about 15 of the rib stitches of the rows of ribbing on one side. So this is what's going to give us a good stretch to our cuff, and you'll notice that you'll have about 15 of these, which is actually equal to 2 rows because you need to do this side and the back side to get that. So I'll meet you back here once you're done with your 30 total rows and the 15 ribbed rows on each side. I'm just finishing up my 15th ribbed row, or my 30th row, and it should look about like this. This is a great stitch because it's very stretchy. Just make sure that when you did your cuff that you didn't stitch too tight. You need to make sure that you stay nice and loose on it. Otherwise, it'll just be hard to get back in there when we're coming around with the other cuff, or on to build up. Okay, so we're going to chain 1 at the end. We're going to turn our work, and then we're going to connect the ends of our cuff. So to do that, you can see the 3 parts of this stitch. There's this top loop here, there's this loop here, and then there's a loop down in front. The one we want to go into for this, instead of doing the back loop, we're going to go into this middle loop. So we're going to go into the loop, we're going to go on this side, then we'll go into, again, the middle loop. So not this way back one, but we're going to go right there. Okay, so we're going to yarn over, and then we're going to slip stitch. And we're going to do that all the way across. So we're going to go through the middle loop, and then we're going to go in through this middle loop. And if you wove in as you went, as I did, it might be a little difficult to see and to get your hook in there. So you might have to just work at it a little bit. So there's 2. And continue this all the way across. Okay, now that our cuff is closed up, you can see how stretchy that is. My husband was able to get his hand through quite nicely, and it works for me as well. I have pretty small hands. My husband has large hands, so it worked for both of us. If you need to adjust, either go looser on it or tighter, do whatever you need to do to make sure that that fits okay. Okay, so we're going to chain 1, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start stitching around the cuff. And this is where we're going to start working up. So what we need to do is we need to get 30 stitches around this cuff. So we're going to go through the ribbing and in between the ribbing on every single one of them. So right where you chained 1, you're going to go back in through there, and you're going to do a single crochet. Then we're going to go in between the stitches, and we're going to single crochet here. And we're just going to keep working. So in the ribbing, you can see how you can kind of spread apart the V, these 2 little stitches, or 2 little parts of the stitch. Spread that apart, get your hook in there. And I will recommend that you stay loose on this. For the remainder of this smitten, you want to make sure that you are not crocheting too tight. So pull it up and kind of give it a little slack. And that's very, very important for this project because of the kind of stitch that we're doing. Because we're doing the crocheted knit stitch, you'll have to go back in the next round through here, and you don't want to have that be too tight. No matter what size hook you're using, you don't want to be too tight with your stitches. So I'm normally a semi-loose crocheter, but for this stitch, I think I kind of tense up a little, so I have to really remind myself to really pull up on that and make it loose. So that's what we're going to do. So go ahead and continue around until you get 30 stitches on here, and I'll meet you back at the end. I have my 30 stitches here, and I'm back at the beginning. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start the next 4 rows of our repeat. This will count as 1 row, and we need to do 4 more of the crocheted knit stitch. So to do that, I'm not going to do a slip stitch and join here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start the crocheted knit stitch. So in here, not through the loops, we're not going in through the loops at all during this project. Normally when you do a single crochet, that's where you want to work. We're not doing that here. So where you want to go is right to the left of that and in between these two little V's. And this is what gives it the look of knitting. Let me see if I can find a better stitch. So on this one it would be, it's like between your stitches, it's between your two loops and down a little bit. That's where you want to go in when you're looking at your stitch. Okay, so again we're just going to start working on our next row, and I'm not going to be doing the slip stitch and then chaining one and then continuing each row, and I'll show you why. So we're going to just do our single crochet there, and that's in that stitch, which gives us our first knit stitch. I'm going to do one more stitch here. So this is our next one, and again you just do a single crochet, and this is why it's important to not go too tight on it. It will be hard to get into some of those, so make sure that you're pulling up enough thread or enough yarn, and then you're having a little bit of slack there, so that the next time around you'll be able to get in there nice and easy into that little V. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my stitch marker, because I'm going to just do continuous rounds, and I'm going to mark that stitch. Again, instead of going and marking it in the two loops, I'm going to mark it into my V where my hook will actually go. That way there's no confusion when I come around. If I see it here, it's like, oh, do I go in here or here? You know where you're going to go because you're putting your stitch marker in there, so there will be no question when you come around. It's just the most efficient way to do it that I found. So that way you can keep track of where the beginning of your round is, and it's pretty nice and simple to do that. And I want to show you the difference. I actually did the two different methods here. So you can see from this one that I actually did do the slip stitch to the first stitch, and then I chained one, and then I continued the next row. You can see where I did that on those first 5 rows, and I don't like that. It's not crazy noticeable when you're wearing it and you're out and about, but if you want to avoid that and kind of have more of a smooth, streamlined look, this one you can tell a difference. It doesn't have the join. So I highly recommend this method. If you want to do the join and work up, it's up to you. You can do either method. This is just what I found to be a neater method. Okay, so I'll do a few more of these with you, and then I'll stop and we'll finish our 5th round, up to our 5th round. Again, this is the second one. We just started our 2nd round. So we're going to go up to 5, finish that one, and then come back at the end of that. So to go into the next one, we're going to go into the V here. So insert your hook. It's a little tight. Some of them will be, so just make sure you pull up and give yourself slack. And then do your single crochet. And this is what you're going to do the whole way around, and you'll have 30 stitches, or you should have 30 stitches by the time you get back here. So I'm going to finish up this round, and I'll meet you back once it's done. I'm coming up to the end of my 5th row, and I wanted to finish the last couple with you so that I could make sure that you see where I'm going in through the stitch. I feel like it was kind of hard to see when I was down by the cuff, but you can see the stitches much better now, and this is how it should be looking. So again, where you're going to go in is right here in this, just like a V-stitch with knitting. You're going to go right in there. So you're going to insert your hook and then do your single crochet. So everything from there will be the same. You just want to make sure that you're inserting it in between the V versus in through the loops. You don't go in there. You have to go down in between these, in that stitch. Okay, so here's our last one. And you can tell that we have the 5 rows because you can look between the ribbing and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this off and set it aside. And then we're going to start our next one. And in fact, you won't even need this marker in here anymore because you'll know that's the first stitch because of where you finished off here. So I'm going to use this on my next one. So we're going to get going on our second cuff. We're going to do exactly the same thing. You're going to start with all of your ribbing and get 30 rows, and then connect your cuff and then start working up. You're going to do your 5 rows up of doing your crocheted knit stitch. So I'll meet back with you once you have your other cuff done. Just don't cut off the end when you finish your second cuff. We're going to work off of that. So both of my cuffs are now completed. Now comes the part where we actually join these. So what we need to do is we're going to work 15 of the stitches on the cuff we just completed on our second cuff. So we're going to do 15 stitches. Then when we get to this side, we're going to join this one. Now there's a couple of ways to go about and do this. If you want to have, I like symmetry, so where you can see the cuff, where we joined our cuff, I like that to be on the outside on both of them, which means that you actually have to join halfway down here instead of on the start of the cuff. So I already marked off the 16th stitch, and so when I come around here and I do 15 stitches, then I'm going to join onto the 16th stitch here. So, and if you want to just start from the beginning, you can do that. Then it would just look like this. So on my Smitten, you can see here's my join here and here's my join. So if you don't want to do that, or if you really don't care, what it would be is you'd have the join of the cuff here, and then you would see it on the inside here. Again, I just like the symmetry of having them point out because the first one will for sure point out. So I like to have them both do that. Okay, so I'm going to start crocheting around, and again we're doing the crocheted knit stitch, which I think is also called the waistcoat stitch. So we're going to go ahead and do 15 on here. So there's 1, 2, 15. So I've done the first half. Okay, now this is where we're going to join. In fact, I should keep that stitch marker in here. Okay, so if you didn't put your stitch marker back in, here's an easy way to find it. Because with the knit stitches, they lead straight up, so I know that's my first stitch. Because this is right after my join, so I just follow that up. Okay, so now I'm going to join over here to my 16th stitch on this one, and now we can lose this stitch marker. We won't need to put that one back on. So you're just going to insert your hook into that 16th stitch, and this is where the join happens. So again, you go in through that like a knit stitch and finish your single crochet. And this is where it will cause a little bit of a gap, but that's okay. We'll just do a little whip stitch with our spare yarn once we get a little further up. So we're going to finish crocheting all the way around this cuff. And now you can see I'm coming back to the beginning. So what I'm going to do is actually stitch over this a couple, but then I'm going to leave that loose, and then I'll weave in my ends. You can either crochet over the whole thing, or you can weave in your ends like I'm going to do. Either way is fine. I just like the added security. Okay, so now I'm back at the beginning of this, but again we have to go all the way around this cuff. Okay. I'm just going to drop that little tail in here. I'll go through and weave that on the inside again just a little bit later when I'm going to do my whip stitch and close up that hole. Okay, so you want to make sure you don't twist it. Okay, so you can see that we went into this stitch already from the other side. So the next stitch we would go into is actually on this cuff right here. Not this one, but this one here. Okay. So again, we insert our hook and finish our single crochet. So then we're going to go all the way around to finish this one. And that'll be your hardest row. At least I think so. Once you get that down though, it's not so bad. The next one we'll start our decreases, and we'll start by going down 4 stitches in each decrease row. We're back at the marker. Now, this is going to be our decrease row, and you're going to be decreasing right in between the cuffs on each side. So you'll decrease 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here, go all the way around and decrease 1 stitch here and 1 stitch here. So that'll be 4 decreases that we do this round. So we're going to take this out, do our stitch, and then put it back in. So crochet up to that point, and then we're going to have to put a marker on there when we get there. So we have to do our decrease here. You can see between the cuffs, this is the last stitch on this side on this cuff, and this one is the first one on this new cuff. So before we get here, we need to decrease these 2, and then we'll put a stitch marker in. So we're going to insert our hook here, yarn over and pull through, then we're going to go in through that stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then close it off. I left a pretty big loop up there. Okay, now before I add my stitch markers, I'm going to do the next 2 stitches. So you find the first one here. So we're going to insert our hook, and I did my stitch really tight the last round. Okay, and then insert into the next and yarn over and pull through and close it off. So we now have our 2 decrease stitches on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1 more single crochet. Okay, now I'm going to take my stitch marker, and this is where it helps if you have 2 different colors. Actually, that'll come a little bit later, but I'm going to keep the darker one here, and the other 3 that I end up adding, I will use my lighter color, which the third one won't come for a little while yet. Okay, so in here, I'm going to put this into this first stitch. That way, every time I come around to this stitch, I know I will either have to do that decrease or just my regular crochet on my in-between rows, because you have to do a decrease row, then you do a regular row, then you do a decrease row, and then a regular row. So you'll continue on that pattern for four repeats. Okay, so we're going to continue on and just single crochet like we have been all the way, the single crochet knit stitch, and then I'll meet you back on this side. So I have 3 stitches left. I'm back around to the other side, so I'll do 1 more, and then we're going to do our decrease. Okay, so we're going to decrease on this cuff. And finish that off. Now we're going to do again over here. Now you have to be careful, you don't want to go back under there. This is our first stitch that we want to concern ourselves with. So we're going to go into here, Okay, and then we're going to go into the next one, and then we're going to do our decrease. So now I'm going to put my stitch marker here, so again when I come around to this, I know that's my decrease spot. It's easy to tell where it is right now, but the further up you go, the harder it is. If you recognize your stitches underneath, you'll know when it's coming up, but then you don't really have to pay attention to it because you have to move that stitch marker to get to it, so it just helps you remember. So now we're going to go ahead and just crochet back around. And once we get back at the beginning of this row, the next row will be all the regular single crochet knit stitch for the whole row. So you'll go all the way around and just do your single crochet knit stitch. And I'll show you how we do it once we get around to the other side and we're back here where our decrease was. I'm back around to this marker, and instead of doing another decrease here, we're just going to do a regular stitch all the way around. So to do that, we just move our marker, we're going to take it out, and then we're going to do our regular crochet in here. So you can see the decrease, it looks a little different, but I still find that V, and I go in, and there's one, and now we have to do the same thing in this single crochet. I find that V, and I go in there. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back in, and then I'll work around and I'll finish this round. Now the next one after that is going to be another decrease. So when we get to this stitch, we're going to decrease over these two and decrease over these two. So that's on the next round. Then the following round after that has to be another regular knit stitch all the way around. And so we're going to alternate like that until we have 4 sets. So you have 4 of these decrease rows and 4 of these knit stitch rows. And then once you finish your 4th knit stitch row, then we'll meet back here. Okay, so this is what you should have so far. I have finished my 4 repeats of doing the decrease, and then a regular knit stitch, decrease, regular knit stitch, decrease, regular knit stitch, decrease, regular knit stitch. Then I went ahead and I wove in my end that I left inside, and then I also put a stitch marker. This is the beginning of my round, and I added this 3rd stitch marker here on stitch number 22. So you count starting off here, that's your first one, count all the way down, and there's 22. But you want to mark your ends, because now we're going to start decreases at these spots and the sides. So again, we're going to decrease before and after the stitch marker, and then we're going to do the same thing here. So right before this stitch marker and right after, we're going to start decreasing now for the rest of the time, and that's going to really make the shape take place and really start to decrease. So before I did that, you also want to go ahead and close up this gap here. This is where you want to take that opportunity to close up this hole. So I went ahead and I threaded my needle. So I figured I'd just quickly show you. I'm just going to do a whip stitch really quick. So I'm going to tie a knot. Okay, and then I'll weave in my ends. So you just, all you really want to do is just go around like this. And just to make sure that it's sealed up, I go back as well. Okay, once you have that tied in a knot, we're just going to weave in that end. And we'll go back and weave in the other end. Should make it nice and secure. Okay. And like I said, you want to do this now because if you wait until the end, you won't be able to get in through the bottom. So this is definitely the best place to do this. So now we can pick up again and go back around, and again, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start off this row with a decrease because we finished the last one on all knit stitch. So we're going to take this out. We're going to start this row with a decrease, and we're going to finish the row with a decrease. So we're going to start here and decrease. And I know this is, I have put the darker one here, so I will always know that this is the beginning of my round. Okay, and then we're going to work up to the next join, the next marker, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I said, at the beginning of that round you should have been at 44 stitches. So we had reduced a total of 16 through those 4 decrease rows. So it should be at 44 stitches when you start this row. And now we did our first decrease in that row. Okay, so now we're right up to the marker. We're going to do one decrease here. And we're going to do our next decrease here. Okay. Then we're going to go up to this one and do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to continue this all the way around. We're going to finish this round with a decrease, and then when we start the next round, all the stitches will be just the regular crocheted knit stitch. And then we're going to repeat this round. So we're going to start with a decrease, decrease here, decrease here, decrease here, and finish with a decrease, then again a full knit stitch. And we're just going to keep that pattern going until we get down and have about 7 or 8 stitches left. I'm down to my last 12 stitches, so I continue to work my repeat of my decrease row, then a regular row, and decrease row, and so on, until I got to this point where I have 12 stitches left. I'm now on my final decrease round, and for this round what we're going to do is we're just going to decrease on every stitch. That'll give us 6 stitches at the end, and it'll make it nice and easy to weave in. So you can remove all of your markers. And then just go ahead and work your decrease all the way throughout. Okay, so you should now have 6 stitches on, and we're actually going to cut off our yarn here and leave a little bit of a tail so that you can weave it in and close off your smitten. Okay, now from here you're going to work in your front loop only and just continue to stitch around. So we're just going to go up through that front loop of each stitch. And pull tight. Then we're going to tie it off and weave in our yarn, and then you'll be all done. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it. My husband, I don't know if he'll be brave enough to wear out in public with me, but I know with my kids, I still have one or two of them that would be willing to be seen in public with me with this. So I might give it a try, but let me know what you think down below. If there's anything you'd like to see, just let me know. If you have any suggestions, I'd really appreciate it. Please like and share my video if you can. If you want to see more of my tutorials, subscribe to my page, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.